Have you ever been in a room where you were present but not fully seen? I have. I grew up in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I've lived in Auckland for half my life, and I spent the other half of my life living in Canada. My mom is Samoan, and my dad is Canadian. And that duality has shaped my worldview and how I've come to understand leadership and culture. As a child, one of my fondest memories growing up were of our large Samoan family gatherings. Anytime there was an occasion to celebrate, the entire family would come together for a big island feast. And following the meal, the children would perform in a family program. We'd perform items, songs, poems, dances. As a child, I was painfully shy. When it was my turn to perform, everyone in the room knew the routine. They had to close their eyes, or they had to turn around and look the other way. I'd then perform my item, and my family would clap and cheer and applaud. And I remember, despite the fact that they hadn't seen me with their eyes, I felt deeply seen. I felt proud. I felt connected. I felt like I belonged. Fast forward 20 years to a workplace in Canada where I was performing every day. I worked exceptionally hard. I had the qualifications, and I believe that if I just kept delivering results, eventually somebody would recognize me. Somebody would see my effort. That day never came. Instead, I remember feeling overwhelmed, undervalued, and unseen. Those experiences didn't just shape how I felt. They shaped how I've come to understand leadership and culture. Here's what I now know to be true. I wasn't invisible. I was working in systems that didn't know how to see me. And here's the uncomfortable truth. I believe that those systems don't just fail individuals, they fail innovation. Because what I experienced isn't rare, it's structural. Have you ever noticed that the workplaces you come in contact with are full of capable, creative, intelligent people who've learned often unconsciously to hold back? Not because they lack ideas, but because the space doesn't always feel safe enough to share them. The way I see it is that innovation isn't failing because we lack talent, intelligence, or technology. It's failing because too many people are operating from self-protection mode instead of possibility. And I believe that you cannot innovate from survival mode. I spent over 20 years working in the leadership space, and here's what my experience has taught me. That when leaders change how they see people, people change how they see themselves. And right now, the world of work is asking more of people than ever. Our world is polarized. Change is unrelenting. And despite rapid innovation and technological advancements, people are feeling increasingly depleted and disconnected. Gallup's global research has found that only 1 in 5 people worldwide are engaged at work. The rest are either emotionally checked out or actively disengaged. Research in social neuroscience provides evidence to support this. Powers and colleagues found that people experiencing social exclusion show decreased cognitive engagement and increased stress response, which can impact learning and creativity outcomes. When people don't feel safe, they tend to stop speaking up and they tend to stop sharing ideas. I believe that leaders have a sacred responsibility to create the conditions for people to live into their highest potential. Because when people see themselves differently, they don't just work differently, they imagine differently. That's where humanism meets innovation, and that's the power of being seen. This talk is an invitation, not to do more, but to lead differently. So I thought I'd share 3 key lessons to help unlock human potential. Lesson 1, to leva, tend the space between us. In Western leadership, we talk about psychological safety. Harvard professor Amy Edmondson defines it as a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking, where people can speak up without fear of punishment or humiliation. In Pacific cultures, this idea already exists. We call it leva, the relational space between people. Not empty space, living space. Author, poet, and professor Albert Wendt describes va as the space between. Not space that separates, but space that relates. Leadership in this worldview is not positional, it's relational. When that space is nurtured, people thrive. And when it is neglected, everything fractures. What Western leadership calls psychological safety, Pacific cultures understand as relational care. Google's Project Aristotle, led by Julia Rozovsky in 2015, found that the #1 predictor of innovative, high-performing teams wasn't talent and it wasn't intelligence. It was psychological safety. Here's what that looks like in practice. I once worked with a leader who was capable, respected, and well-intentioned, but her team was quiet. Meetings were efficient and lifeless. Ideas were scarce. This leader didn't need a new strategy. She needed to change how she held the space. And so, she basically stopped filling the silences. She invited voices that were otherwise unheard. She recognized her people for what she saw: effort, insight, potential. At first, it felt uncomfortable, and then it felt different. People spoke up, ideas surfaced, energy shifted. Here's the thing, nothing about the work changed, but everything about the space did. This leader didn't need a transformation plan, and this type of leadership is not rare. It's not intuitive, it's not charismatic. It's learnable. Lesson 2, truly see your people. Many of the leaders I work with think that they do see their people. But in the corporate world of work, often what we're taught to see are roles, outputs, and performance metrics. Being seen is different. Being seen means that somebody recognizes your humanity, your struggles, your strengths, and your potential. When I work with my coaching students, we do an encouragement exercise. We ask each student to share a time where they've used a strength to overcome a challenge or a weakness. Those listening are asked to listen for the essence of what they heard. What did they see? What did they hear? What did they notice? And then reflect that back. Time and time again, the response is emotional. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's rare. Recognition is powerful. A single moment of truly seeing someone can change how that person sees themselves. And when that happens, everything shifts. Seeing people is not about fixing them. It's about believing in them before they fully believe in themselves. Lesson 3, small acts create big impact. Here's the thing that most leaders miss. I believe that unlocking human potential doesn't require grand gestures or sweeping transformation plans. It happens through small, consistent acts. A conversation where someone feels heard. A moment of trust instead of control. An invitation to speak when someone would rather stay silent. The leaders who bring out the best in their people are not the loudest. They're the most intentional. They notice, they listen, they respond with humanity. The future of leadership is not about doing more. It's about leading differently. In a world racing towards automation, artificial intelligence, and constant change, the most radical act of leadership we can choose is deeply human. And so my invitation to you is this: what would change if the people you lead were seen differently? What would become possible if the space between you was tended with care? Because when leaders change how they see people, people change how they see themselves. And I believe that when people see themselves differently, they don't just work differently, they imagine differently. That's how human potential is unlocked, and that's where innovation begins. I see you. Thank you for seeing me.